Hello, I'm Rob, and you're watching another episode of Leadership, Life, and Legacy. In every organization, there's a hidden risk. Individuals whose decisions damage outcomes for themselves, but also for others. These individuals do so without generating any value, and it's not because of incompetency, but rather it's due to unpredictability. As you ponder that teaser, I want to share with you what I've learned from the book, The Basic Laws of Human Stupidity, by economist Carlo Cipolla. First, who is Carlo Cipolla? Cipolla was an Italian economist with a sharp sense of irony and deep insight into human behavior. In his book, The Basic Laws of Human Stupidity, it holds up a mirror to how we judge, lead, and misjudge the people around us. In his teachings, he warned these individuals who damage outcomes for themselves and for others are not rare. In fact, they're embedded in our teams, our systems, and our assumptions. To start, let's introduce the 4 different personas one is likely to encounter in the workplace, but also in life. Let's start with the smart persona. These people are the strategic synthesizers. They are typically leaders or thinkers who excel at seeing the big picture, connecting seemingly unrelated dots, and translating complexity into clarity that drives meaningful and purposeful action. Imagine a leader at the center of a war room, surrounded by colleagues, piecing together a multidimensional puzzle that represents business growth. Every move invites input, builds trust, and connects dots others tend to overlook. The smart say, let's solve this together. Your insight might unlock the next move. The impact felt by them elevates everyone while solving the mission. Think generative, inclusive, and future-minded. What makes a smart person or strategic synthesizer unique? Well, for starters, they connect disparate inputs. They gather insights from across disciplines, finance, operations, tech, and even our culture. And they weave them into a unified and actionable plan. Smart people, or synthesizers, think beyond silos and recognize that no single perspective holds the whole truth. Synthesizers create value by integrating multiple viewpoints, not just the one that dominates. People who fall into this persona anticipate impact across time and systems. They don't just think about today's fix, they forecast tomorrow's ripple effect. Strategic synthesizers build for scalability, adaptability, and resilience. Lastly, smart or strategic synthesizers clarify through complexity. They're often the ones who say, here's what we're really solving for. This helps the room breathe again. They turn ambiguity into alignment. How do smart or strategic synthesizers show up in leadership? Typically, they're the trusted translator between the C-suite vision and frontline execution. They shift conversations from symptom chasing to root cause solving. They often ask the right questions and at the right moment, opening minds instead of shutting them down. They enable momentum by making strategy feel achievable. So why does this matter in today's business climate? Well, when disruption is constant, strategy alone isn't enough. Integration is the key differentiator. Smart people, or strategic synthesizers, aren't just great thinkers. They're accelerators of clarity, trust, and progress. Think of them as the architects behind the architects, pulling blueprints together to ensure the entire structure holds. Next, let's introduce the helpless or empathetic rescuer persona. People that fall into this persona are driven by a deep desire to support others. They are well-intended humans who show up to fix, buffer, and serve. Oftentimes, they are the quiet workhorses of the organization, carrying unforeseen burdens and sacrificing their own effectiveness for the team's harmony and comfort. Imagine a leader who is well-liked by their team. This person is known for their kindness, reliability, and willingness to step in whenever something falls through the cracks. Whenever a teammate misses a deadline, this person quietly finishes their work, perhaps after hours, or even on the weekend. When a last-minute request turns up, this person absorbs the pressure without pushing back. They avoid conflicts and pride themselves on being the glue that holds everything together. What makes a helpless or empathetic rescuer unique? Well, they tend to give without direction. And, unlike the stupid persona, who we will cover later, whose actions cause unpredictable damage, the helpless causes slow erosion of their own capacity, their team's clarity, and the boundaries that make sustainable leadership possible. They are often well-intentioned enablers of dysfunction, beloved by many, but impactful only when they learn to lead with boundaries, not just with their heart. How do helpless or empathetic rescuers show up in leadership? Well, they tend to overcommit to protect others. Simply, they'll say yes out of loyalty, even when the bandwidth or clarity to deliver isn't there. We also tend to see the helpless or empathetic rescuer absorb the stress of the team, oftentimes becoming the emotional sponge for other departments, teams, or individuals. In the same way, people who fall into this persona tend to avoid tough conversations, perhaps over fear of hurting feelings, often accepting misalignment and deferring conflict for comfort. When push comes to shove, the helpless gravitate to harmony over progress, as they seek to maintain peace, even if it means derailing accountability, performance, or strategic clarity. Lastly, the helpless or empathetic rescuer prioritizes being needed over being effective. Their identity is tied to helpfulness and not impact. So why does this matter in today's business climate? Simply, the helpless or empathetic rescuer persona matters in today's business climate because it represents a leadership blind spot that can quietly undermine progress. This can occur even in organizations built on empathy, collaboration, and service. Now, let's discuss why it deserves attention. First, let's acknowledge that burnout culture is real, and it's quietly celebrated. We see this in high-performance environments. Leaders who resemble the helpless persona are often praised for their dedication. But this chronic self-sacrifice masks deeper organizational issues. For example, there can be a lack of accountability, poor clarity on role or vision. There is also a dependency cycle that erodes team resilience. Their presence feels comforting, but their impact can be costly. Next, let's talk about an elephant in the room. The concept of helpfulness does not equal effectiveness. Let's dig into this. Today's workforce needs leaders who coach, empower, and delegate, not those who simply absorb dysfunction. Helpless leaders unintentionally stall growth by rescuing instead of raising others. Instead, they fix problems instead of facilitating ownership. At the same time, they create emotional safety at the expense of strategic clarity. And lastly, their teams lean on them instead of learning through them. Now let's tweak this narrative a little bit. Let's start with the premise that strategic empathy is a competitive edge. Empathy alone is not enough. It must be paired with boundaries, vision, and the ability to say no when needed. The helpless persona teaches us this, and it reminds us that the unfiltered empathy without direction is compassion fatigue disguised as leadership. Organizations must help servant-hearted leaders lead with strength and strategy, not just selflessness. The last thing that must not be overlooked is ultimately culture. Culture is built on what is tolerated. In cultures that reward overextension, the helpless persona becomes the norm. But when leaders model resilience, prioritization, and coaching over rescuing, culture shifts. When the culture shifts, we tend to see that conversations deepen, performance aligns, and psychological safety expands. Now, let's introduce the bandit, or the results-first renegade. Envision the polished exec slipping through a strategy session, scooping up credit, resources, and influence along the way, oftentimes from the most vulnerable voices at the table. They are likely to say, "This is just business. You've got to know when to take a win." Their impact gains traction in the short term, but it leaves relational wreckage in its path. Sharp, calculated, they certainly are. Trusted as well, until they're not. In today's workplace, the bandit persona represents a charismatic, results-driven leader who prioritizes personal success, oftentimes at the expense of team cohesion and long-term team culture. They're persuasive, political, and savvy, and fast-moving, but their approach can erode trust, undermine collaboration, and create instability. They excel at navigating systems for personal gain, frequently reframing narratives to center themselves in secure visibility while sidestepping accountability. While bandit leaders may generate short-term impact, their methods often leave others feeling bypassed or manipulated. To evolve, they must shift from extraction to value creation, learning that influence stems not from control or optics, but from credibility, shared ownership, and sustainable trust. Their legacy depends not on how fast they rise, but on what and who they lift along the way. What makes a bandit unique? The bandit persona is uniquely defined by its strategic charm and self-serving orientation. Unlike other leadership types, who may falter to emotional overextension, poor judgment, or reactive tendencies, the bandit operates with calculated intent. They are persuasive and charismatic, knowing exactly how to navigate power dynamics, amplify their visibility, and reframe conversations to position themselves as the center of influence. This leader isn't reckless, they're precise, and while they do drive results, their wins are often personal, not collective. What truly sets the bandit apart is their ability to extract value without reciprocating it. They produce momentum but rarely build sustainability. They leverage trust to secure advantage and operate well within ambiguity, yet frequently bypass collaboration and transparency. Their leadership footprint may look impressive at first, visible, high output, and decisive. But beneath the surface lies a culture of relational erosion and long-term instability. The bandit persona is trusted until they're not. And that arc, the subtle shift from admired to avoided, is what makes this persona both powerful and high risk in today's trust-driven business climate. How do bandits or results-first renegades show up in leadership? Oftentimes, people that fit this persona are seen as high output, self-serving people who drive results, often with charisma and tactical brilliance. But at the same time, they lack shared accountability. They know how to play the game, and they play it very well, navigating politics, securing resources, and positioning themselves as indispensable. Their success metrics tend to center on personal advancement rather than team or enterprise-wide growth. While bandit leaders may bring strategic wins, their style can create cultural instability. They frequently bypass collaboration in favor of control, leaving others feeling sidelined, exploited, or uncertain about their motives. Their leadership footprint is visible but shallow, focused more on optics than outcomes that endure. The challenge with bandits isn't capability, it's orientation. When self-interest overshadows stakeholder value, legacy suffers. To evolve, this persona must pivot from performance for recognition to impact through connection. So why does this matter in today's business climate? The bandit, or renegade's first persona, matters in today's business climate because it reveals a critical tension between short-term achievement and long-term trust, one that organizations can no longer afford to ignore. In today's business climate, the bandit, or results-first renegade, represents a high-performing, self-orientated leader who excels at delivering results, but often at the expense of trust, collaboration, and cultural cohesion. They're strategic, persuasive, and quick to navigate ambiguity, making them seem indispensable in high-stakes environments. Yet, beneath the surface, their behavior centers on personal gain, credit hoarding, selective collaboration, and political maneuvering that sidelines team dynamics and erodes psychological safety. Their actions may yield short-term wins, but leave behind fragmented relationships and stalled long-term growth. This matters because when organizations reward bandit behaviors, either explicitly or by overlooking the fallout, they send a clear message that individual success trumps shared accountability. Bandits can destabilize culture, limit leadership pipelines, and model competitive extraction over collaborative impact. In a world where agility and trust are paramount, the bandit is not just a high-output player, they're a high-risk influencer. Leadership today requires a shift from performance at any cost towards purpose with integrity. Organizations must recognize, challenge, and reframe bandit tendencies to build legacies that actually last. And lastly, let's introduce the stupid or well-intended wrecking ball persona. Picture a leader bursting into a strategy session with unchecked enthusiasm, half-baked ideas, and a deep conviction that their intuition alone will solve everything. They derail agendas, dismiss data, and interrupt with phrases like, "Let's just go with our gut. This just feels right." Their actions generate confusion, unintended harm, and reactive messes that more capable teams must clean up. Oftentimes, They are erratic and unaware. At the same time, they are passionate but without precision. They are often confident but dangerously inconsistent. In today's workplace, the stupid persona represents the unpredictable leader who harms organizational progress through poor judgment, not malice, but misplaced conviction. They create chaos by ignoring process, overriding expertise, and underestimating consequences. Their confidence exceeds their competence, and they rarely recognize the damage they cause. While they may appear energetic or visionary, their inability to align action with values causes ripple effects across teams, culture, and results. Unlike the bandit, who extracts value intentionally, the stupid or well-intended wrecking ball persona causes harm incidentally, and they do it through impulsive, misplaced certainty and resistance to feedback. They don't just fail, they fail loudly, leaving others disorientated and exhausted in their aftermath. To evolve, they must develop self-awareness, embrace strategic constraint, and learn that effectiveness comes from measured leadership, not erratic action. Their legacy depends not on enthusiasm, but on intentionality, accountability, and the wisdom to pause before impact. What makes a stupid or well-intended wrecking ball persona unique? Simply, this persona represents a leader whose actions are fueled more by impulse than insight. They charge into decisions with confidence, disregarding data, process, and expert input, not because they mean harm, but because they genuinely believe they're helping. Their leadership style is unpredictable and reactive. It's driven by gut instinct and emotional urgency. Unfortunately, that enthusiasm often creates confusion, disruption, and collateral damage that more grounded teammates must resolve. What makes this persona especially dangerous is their lack of self-awareness. They're often immune to feedback, resistant to reflection, and unable to recognize the consequences of their choices. While others may lead with strategy, empathy, or ambition, the stupid persona leads with unchecked conviction, making them one of the hardest to course correct. Their impact isn't just inefficient, it's destabilizing, especially in fast-paced environments where clarity and coordination are critical. In the modern business landscape, good intentions aren't enough. Without awareness and accountability, passion quickly turns into a liability. How do stupid or well-intended wrecking ball personas show up in leadership? The stupid persona, or well-intended wrecking ball, tends to show up in leadership as a force of enthusiasm wrapped in unpredictability. This leader often believes confidence is a substitute for competency, charging ahead without consulting key stakeholders, analyzing data, or understanding the systems that they're about to disrupt. They may be highly visible, charismatic, and quick to jump into action, especially in times of crisis or transformation. But their approach is impulsive, driven more by emotion or gut instinct, rather than strategic insight. In practice, they tend to override process, dismiss expertise, and pivot too often, confusing teams and destabilizing progress. They're likely to shake things up simply because change feels good, not because change is needed. Feedback is often brushed off as resistance. Complexity is met with oversimplified solutions. While their intent might be to help or inspire, their lack of foresight creates a pattern which has them tending to start bold, only to backtrack later, which leaves others in a chronic state of cleanup. In leadership roles, this persona doesn't just create turbulence, they unknowingly compromise momentum, morale, and trust in the name of passion. So why does this matter in today's business climate? The stupid or well-intended wrecking ball persona, as we have discussed, represents a leader who acts impulsively, under the guise of passion or urgency, creating disruption not from malice, but from a lack of awareness. They bypass process, dismiss expertise, and make emotionally driven decisions that derail strategy, leaving teams and systems in a state of constant repair. Their confidence masks a deeper issue, an inability to reflect, adjust, or learn from feedback. In today's complex and high-velocity business environments, this persona matters because it reveals how good intentions, when untethered from insight or discipline, can sabotage progress. Organizations built on trust, clarity, and collaboration suffer when leadership becomes erratic or unaccountable. The stupid persona is a cautionary behavioral profile as it reminds us that impactful leadership isn't just about energy or conviction, but about clarity, intentionality, and the humility to pause before acting. At the end of the day, leadership is a mirror, not just a megaphone. Leadership isn't just about intelligence, strategy, or charisma. It's about impact. And, as Cipolla's matrix reminds us, every leader leaves a ripple. Some expand possibility, some absorb burden, some extract value, and some unknowingly create chaos. The truth is, we've all stood in each quadrant at some point. We've led from clarity, and we've led from reaction. We've built, absorbed, climbed, and occasionally wrecked, with or without awareness. But leadership legacy isn't defined by moments, it's shaped by patterns. So ask yourself, not just as a professional, but as a person, where do you lead from when no one's watching? Do you empower others or exhaust yourself trying to protect them? Ask, is your impact felt through connection or correction? Because in the end, the smartest leaders aren't the ones who avoid risk or failure. They're the ones who see themselves clearly. Then choose courage over comfort, growth over ego, and legacy over attention. Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being present, reflective, accountable, and human. Last point on this video. It isn't meant to be controversial and certainly not disrespectful. It's a reflection tool designed to open minds and spark meaningful leadership growth. The personas we've explored aren't labels to judge, but lenses to learn through. Every leader at some point has felt the pull of overextension, ambition, impulsiveness, or even well-meaning erosion. Acknowledging these behaviors doesn't diminish your value, it strengthens your awareness, because awareness is leadership currency. When you can spot these patterns in yourself, your peers, or your teams, you gain more than insight. You gain choice. You gain clarity. You gain the ability to shift from reaction to intention. So if any of this felt familiar, don't resist it. Reflect on it. And remember, knowing the persona isn't the end game. Managing it with empathy, accountability, and alignment is what defines your impact. Thanks for watching. Let's keep building something that lasts.